The concept behind my work is pretty much based on how important bees are, how necessary they are in our ecosystem. People don't really understand that, and there has been a significant decline. My name's Mario Hannes, and the title of my body of work is Belittled. I made it in two sections, the two drawings on a really large scale to kind of bring importance to it. It was hard to get the pencil strokes correct to make it look really fluffy. So what I would do is just repeatedly go over the paper multiple times, and then at the end really fine tune it with a really sharp pencil to get the really thin lines to make it look very fluffy and furry. The research I did, a lot of it actually National Geographic showed me, David Attenborough documentaries, as well as other artists that I researched on my own. One was Sue Beatrice and the other was Igor Verny. They're both sculpting artists which use metal in the style of steampunk to create their little sculptures. The first hand is my own, the second hand is my grandmother's, and then the third hand is my brother's. The hands I made with a moulding compound called alginate. It's a dental moulding mixture. Put whoever's hand I was going to cast inside it, let it dry, remove it, and then fill in the plaster of Paris. The metallic bee sculptures are made out of the metal injectors, which are from my dad's workshop. And the second part were the wings. That was the most fiddly part, I would say. I made that through using a really strong metallic glue, as well as watch pieces that I would pull apart, take out the gears, and then put back together in the formation of a wing. Belittled, it's a play on words of how it's in society's hands to do something about it. So humans are belittling the bees, if that makes sense. It's a small thing, but it needs to be taken care of, and it hasn't been up until now. So I hope that my body of work has given people a bit of an insight as to, what it's all about. Such little things are so necessary, and not to just overlook it and brush it off and forget about it, but to actually help them, perhaps. But yeah.
Hi, my name's Kate Johnstone, and this is my body of work, Letters to Home. My body of work was inspired by all the houses I've lived in over the years growing up. I lived in 5 different houses until I was 7, so just themes of changing and moving around at a young age and the effects it can have on an individual's childhood. The start of the process, I had to go onto Photoshop and try and get a rough idea of what type of lines I was going to make on the lino prints, and I used just little tools to carve the lines, and then it was a bit of a process to print them using inks and rolling them through the press, and it took a while to get a good print for each of them actually. And the 4 big pictures are in black and white because it kind of represents the idea of memories and history. They kind of look old because they are. I haven't lived in them for a good 10 years. And the postcards with the writing on it were etchings, and to do those I had to make a whole bunch of layers, and I had to carve into the etchings backwards to make the prints the right way around for the audience to read, and I had to apply ink on them, wipe the ink off, print the ink onto the etchings that I'd already printed, and it was a long process. So the small postcards use gradual increase in brighter colours when they get to the more recent house, just to kind of enforce the idea of memories kind of getting clearer. When I was actually carving them and making the works, I got to actually think about the different memories I'd made in each house, and you know, the time spent there at such a young age. So I did enjoy doing it because I got to kind of reflect on my childhood a little bit. Through the title, Letters to Home, it kind of conveys the amount of emotion it was moving and changing and packing up my childhood and moving around.
I went on 2 art trips to Fowler's Gap in 2016 and 2017. I remember this one exercise where we were tasked to make a sculpture out of the bits of the land, like rocks, trees and everything. And when we went the second time, they were still there. The sculptures had just become a part of the ecosystem and then like the environment. My name is Ben Hartman and this is my artwork, Fowler's Gap Remnants. The second time we went with an artist called Hayden Wilson. He got us to do an exercise where we took a 1 meter by 1 meter block of land and at random, and we just had to explore how that land had some significance, even though it was seemingly insignificant. So the first time I went, I kind of felt like I had a greater appreciation for the entirety of the landscape, more about how untouched it was, how everything kind of was part of the land and the land itself had an influence on the things in it. And the second time, because of that exercise with the Lucas non-consequentia, which is the 1 by 1 meter, I really felt like each individual aspect of the land contributed in its own special way. It all had its story to tell. And I also got to noticing all of the, you know, the bits that man had left behind, the rusted tin cans, and everything like that. So I'd say the first one I really gained appreciation for the landscape, and the second I gained like insight into how it was kind of built. So my assemblages are made up of found objects from Fowler's Gap. To come up with the shapes that they're in, I just sat down for a good day or two and looked at all the pieces and how each bit complemented each other. The printmaking technique I used is called collograph, and it's where you take like a really thin piece of cardboard and you can cut, and every mark you make comes out, and you can stick bits of leaves. It kind of ties to the sculptures that I did as well, as in kind of using bits of the land in my artwork. Chine-coulé is another printmaking technique where you print onto a softer material other than paper, so like tissue paper, and I incorporated little bits of this to mimic the bark of eucalyptus trees and you know, bits of dirt, and also the gold that I incorporated is an ode to Broken Hill's mining history, as it was originally a mining town. Yeah. They explore how everything is made up of the little things, you know. It's a study of how the land works and how it's made up.
My name's Imogen Gribble, and the name of my body of work is Enlightenment. It's the idea that as individuals grow older, they also become wiser as a result of greater life experience. I got this idea through hearing about my grandfather speak and comparing his experiences to my own and to my father's. Yeah, my grandpa grew up in the Shire, and yeah, he was born here, and he's always telling me and my family about his experiences growing up and his travels around Australia because he's a marathon runner. He was a marathon runner, and his experiences in school and in work. I started on my grandfather first, on his portrait, because I knew it would take the longest. It was quite daunting just thinking that I had these 3 portraits, and especially when I drew them out and I knew how big I wanted them each to be, but yeah, that was quite daunting. I used graphite and I started out with a basic sketch, and I just started to like shade in with like a little blender pencil, and then I added details over the top and just built it up. It took me about 4 months on my grandfather, and then it took about 2 months for my father, and then for my own one it took about 2 weeks because I was rushing. I convey my idea of enlightenment through the use of the shadow on the face. My one is very high contrast on the face. My father's is a bit of a gentle shadow, and then my grandfather's just, he's out in the light, and there's hardly any shadow in his portrait. I decided to put them in ascending order from of age. I like the look of it having, my grandfather and then the father and then me, so it's like age progression. I always knew I wanted to do a family orientated work just because I liked the idea of, working on portraits of my family members, because I see them a lot and every day, and it's cool to work drawing out their features and then comparing them to my own, and then to each other's, and it was really it was really good to do like a family series.
The main focus is about time and about how appreciation links with time and memory. My dog Jasper, he's been with me for 14 years, which is literally since I've been a baby. I've been with him, and so we just have a really strong connection. Even though he's aging, time is passing, the memories, the imprints will still last, and that's basically what my work's about. As around the time of 18, that's year 12, that's when things are changing, you're going to a new environment like university, you start reflecting on whether these relationships will last. I'm a person that really gets personally intertwined in these kind of things and just gets reflective and sad, but then also I guess excited about the new change. In my work there are 7 boxes in total in which they reflect the days of the week, and in that sense it's showing the progression of aging of my dog through the sizes of the dogs and also the way in which they are painted. The insides of the box reflect on the stages of which he is possibly growing distant. So my favorite box is the box with the white door hanging mid-air, and then there's also small white paw prints on the bottom of the box. The reason why I really like this box is because it has a very positive outlook on the overall concept, even though it seems very negative at first, suggesting how there's a new beginning, there's imprints that are there, memories that are held, and it's just a very happy, positive outlook, which is also the reason why I like this piece. My favorite painting is also the dog on the front door, because it's really happy, it's really energetic, and it's just the moment when he actually sees me, and so that gives me warmth and a lot of comfort. Yeah.
And the original idea for my concept came from, I would walk to the train station every day to catch my train to and from school, and I would see like perfectly healthy kids, people who are at the prime of their lives, choose an elevator over the stairs. And for me, it upset me because people weren't appreciating what their body was doing. They were just letting their body waste away. And I thought, if people were able to see everything it does, everything amazing and beautiful about it, not just over the skin, but underneath the skin, they would see that if they treat it right, our body will also love us back. So my name is Tiana Foster, and the title of my body of work is Bellezza Dentro. I took the photos myself and then I sent them to a company for sublimation, which is the process of printing ink directly onto fabric. So when it came to the embroidery part of my artwork, the way it was done is that I had access towards embroidery machines. Each individual thread is drawn on a computer and has to be hand done, so it's not a fast process, it's a slow process. Each drawing took about 3 to 4 hours, and I ended up embroidering at least 3 times for each of them onto different pieces of fabric, because each time they just weren't exactly how I wanted. Because all of my drawings, or all my embroidery is actually all anatomically correct. The most trial and error though probably went into the skin process, just because it was a new thing that I had never done before, and it was a different material that's not usually used, because it is just glue. I went through multiple sheets of these adhesives, just trying to find the right texture, find the right way to crinkle it. I'd have to glue them together, mess with them, throw them out, and do it over and over again until I got the effect I wanted. My family has such a long line of bad health and things like that, and seeing that made me more conscious of my own health, so I have invested myself in it, even choosing to study it. Our body at any given second is giving thousands and thousands of chemical equations just so you can breathe, just so you can blink, anything like that. So the artist who actually inspired me was an Australian drawer called Susan Dorothy White. She did real simplistic but real lovely drawings of human muscles and anatomy. They showed beauty within the skin, which is the same thing that I wanted to portray. Making this artwork was important to me because it reflects such a big part of my life. Health is everything to me. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
Ever since I was little, I've been obsessed with horses. I was drawing horses before I was riding them. I've been riding for 5 years, and I've just always wanted to do this as my major work for the HSC. My name's Ashley Yates, and my body of work is titled Equus et Coram, which is the Latin translation of dance and horse and rider. I worked on each image one at a time. I would draw it up onto the area that I wanted, and then using my reference image on my laptop, I would zoom in on a particular section and would draw it and add shadow and detail until I was happy, and then I'd move on to the next section. So it wasn't a, shade the whole body of the horse and then gradually build up detail. It was very this section, this section, this section, and then that way I was able to make sure that it was as close to the reference image as possible, because I was just focusing on that part at each time. All the images that I had as reference images I've taken myself. So I had lots of friends of mine with their own horses and took photos of them riding and of their horses just mucking around, and just picked the ones that I liked the best and thought were the best compositionally. And so I used a whole range of graphite pencils from 9B to HB to 2B, just to get varying degree and depth of shadow. I used paper stumps and Q-tips and tissues to blend it all so that it was nice and smooth and not scratchy or anything like that. I've always loved horses. They were always my favourite animal well before I started writing and working with them, and once I started trying to draw them, and they were rubbish to start with, but yeah, I just kept practicing and wanting to capture the movement of these magnificent animals. The fact that people are able to, with the smallest gestures, bring these huge animals to stop, or to, you know, jump huge big logs, and it's just amazing to me. I just have such a big appreciation for it as a sport and just the beauty of it.